Before we begin today's episode, we want to take a moment to acknowledge something important. Conversations about family, parenting, and childhood wounds can be deeply personal and sometimes painful, but they're also necessary. Here on the Healio Mind Podcast, our goal is to create a space where uncomfortable truths can be explored with compassion, honesty, and clarity, especially when those truths shape the way we grow, love, and navigate adulthood.
Exactly. And today's topic is one many people silently carry for years. If you've ever questioned your experiences or felt something was off in the way you were raised, this conversation may help put words to feelings you've struggled to identify. We're here to unpack not just the patterns of toxic parenting, but the long-term psychological impact, and most importantly, talk about some real pathways to healing.
All right, welcome to the Healio Mind Podcast. Today, we're navigating a really personal and pretty intense landscape.
We're talking about toxic family dynamics, and not just disagreements, but specifically narcissistic and abusive parenting. We want to look at its profound long-term effects on adults, and maybe most importantly, talk about some real pathways to healing.
And our mission today is to synthesize a whole range of sources. We're looking at everything from clinical definitions and psychological theory. We'll even get into some Jungian ideas, all the way to very specific cultural stories and personal survival guides. The goal isn't just to name the pain. We want to offer a synthesis that gives you both the diagnosis and actual practical strategies you can use.
And I think it's so important to say this up front for anyone listening who feels like something is wrong but can't quite name it. Emotional abuse, especially, is often wrapped in this thing one of our sources called malignant normalcy.
That's such a good term for it.
It is. It looks normal on the outside, but it feels so damaging on the inside. So that's what we're here to do, shine a really clear light on these subtle patterns.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into it. Let's unpack the behaviors. When we talk about narcissistic parents, what's the absolute core of it?
It's control, just total control. Total, absolute control. The need to control your life choices, your money, even how you feel. And it doesn't matter if you're 40 years old.
And why is that? What's underneath that need?
It's a fundamental psychological failure to differentiate. The narcissistic parent sees the child's body, their mind, their emotions as, and this is a quote, totally, fully accessible to them. Wow. You're not a separate person. You're an extension of their ego. And so there's zero tolerance for any kind of emotional detachment or independence.
So if I'm hearing you right, they can't separate their identity from yours.
Not at all. And that's what fuels the control.
So what happens when you, as an adult, finally try to draw a line? You say you want to spend Christmas morning at your own house this year.
It's met with immediate hostility. Your boundary to them feels like a threat. It raises their anxiety. And the default response is to call you selfish.
Ungrateful.
Ungrateful.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You get punished for just suggesting you have a life of your own.
And if that direct control doesn't work, then they pull out the next tool, which is emotional manipulation, guilt, shame.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the language of indebtedness.
Yeah.
The guilt trip so often starts with that classic line, "After all I've done for you."
The ultimate conversation stopper.
Right. But some of the shame-based comments we found in the narratives they're designed to completely crush your self-worth.
Like what?
Things like, "I just should have aborted you." Or, "No one would ever have had children if they were like you." The goal is just total internal collapse.
Which brings us right to the lack of empathy. If you try to express that you're hurt by something like that,
It's dismissed. Your feelings are just an inconvenience for them. You're always just too sensitive. And this often gets coupled with this weird, intense competition, like a kind of a junior high one-upism.
what do you mean by that?
They have to downplay your successes to make themselves feel bigger. They'll claim they financed your entire college degree when actually they gave you $500 10 years ago.
Wow, that's so specific.
Yeah,
And then there's the conditional affection. Love is a weapon.
a transactional tool, really.
Okay.
Praise and affection only come out when you're doing what they want or when your success makes them look good.
And it's withdrawn instantly as punishment.
Instantly. It's a sociopathic dynamic. The rule is basically I love you when you do what I want. I do not love you when you don't.
And this kind of love, it creates this impossible standard of perfection.
An impossibly high bar that, by the way, they don't hold for themselves, only for the child. So any mistake triggers this storm of criticism.
So criticizing you for getting the assistant manager job instead of manager.
Exactly. Or shaming you for the neighborhood you bought a house in. It is an endless audit of your life.
And finally, this all leads to exploitation and just punishing you for being an individual.
Yeah, the child gets groomed to be the parent's therapist, their assistant. You're the only one they can count on.
But it's a one-way street.
Completely. And if you try for real independence, you pick a partner they don't like or you celebrate a holiday separately, the reaction can escalate. Silent treatment, tantrums, even threats. Independence is seen as the ultimate rejection.
So we've laid out the patterns, but how early does this stuff start to rewire a person's brain? Let's shift to the deep psychological impact because the research here is frankly staggering.
It really is. Yeah. And we have to look at the different types of abuse because, and this is kind of counterintuitive, emotional abuse, so the constant criticism, withholding love, the threats, that is actually a bigger predictor of suicidal behaviors than physical or even sexual abuse.
Wow. Just that one data point, it changes everything. That constant, invisible chipping away at your self-worth.
It's uniquely damaging. And you have to understand, this trauma programming starts so early in the first few years of life. Oh, so the insight here is that infants are born narcissists, basically. They feel like everything is about them. So when there's conflict or unhappiness between the parents in those crucial 0 to 3 years,
The baby thinks it's their fault.
the child internalizes it and believes this is happening because of my fault. And that creates this deep, constant loop of self-blame and low self-worth that just becomes the default setting for the rest of your life.
And that vulnerability is then magnified by cultural expectations. We saw this in examples from all over, but especially in places like India.
Yes, where the child is often seen explicitly as a project. Their job is to fulfill the parents' unlived dreams.
Right, parenting as a job with a performance review.
Exactly, and the kid's purpose is to hit these external goals, get into a top school, choose the right career, the right spouse.
And the pressure is just immense. We saw a survey showing 51% of Indian parents prioritize their kids' career success over their happiness.
Which was at 49%. It's a tiny margin, but it tells you where the real value is placed. And that pressure creates so much guilt and fear. There was this one painful story about a father who threw away his son's skating medal because he wanted to be cricket.
Oh, that's brutal. It's not about the medal, right? It's about the parent trying to literally erase the child's identity and impose his own. And this kind of thing, tragically, is a factor in high student suicide rates, when kids feel like they just can't meet that impossible standard.
So let's fast forward. When these kids become adults, what's the long-term cost of never being allowed to develop your own sense of self?
The challenges are huge, especially in relationships. You're dealing with chronic trust and abandonment issues because you grew up feeling invisible. And here's the kicker. You might unconsciously seek out partners who mirror that abuse, not because you like pain, but because that pattern, that specific kind of toxicity, it feels normal. It feels like home.
Even if it's a destructive home.
Even then. It's what your body recognizes.
And how does that chronic trauma affect just day-to-day decisions?
It leads to this state of hyperarousal. You make impulsive, sometimes irrational decisions because you're driven by this deep, unconscious need to escape the traumatic environment that's now living inside your head.
So you marry the first person who's nice to you?
Or you make huge, risky financial choices. You're not acting rationally. You're in a constant state of psychological flight.
It's also really interesting how siblings can turn out so differently in the same toxic home.
It's a survival mechanism. Two kids can't compete for the same role, so they polarize. One becomes the golden child, the perfect, compliant one.
And the other becomes the scapegoat, the rebel, the problem child.
Exactly. And the parents often trigger this themselves. They unconsciously project their own unresolved issues differently onto each child, creating these very separate, very specific dynamics.
Okay, so we've looked at the damage, but now let's reframe this. This is where it gets really interesting. Pulling from some Jungian theory, what if all this pain, this chaos, it wasn't a punishment, but some kind of preparation?
That's the ultimate perspective shift. That's what allows for real liberation. Jung talked about individuation, becoming the most whole version of yourself. In this view, a toxic family is like a brutal initiation, a boot camp for the soul. Who you really are gets carved out in chaos because the pain forces you to find a higher, self-generated source of love. It builds spiritual immunity.
So the one who suffered the most might actually be the most prepared?
Precisely. The sources call this person the black sheep. The scapegoat is often the one who's the most spiritually advanced because they're forced to wake up early. They learn empathy by tasting cruelty and rejecting it.
And this kind of environment, it also forces you to confront your own psychological shadow, the wounded parts of yourself. And the scapegoat is the one who refuses to betray their true self.
Yeah.
They choose disruption over dysfunction. It's like psychological alchemy.
Alchemy.
The emotional denial you experience, that transforms into a deep capacity for self-generated tenderness. The control that was disguised as protection, that teaches you true personal sovereignty. You turn the lead of your trauma into the gold of wisdom.
But when that transformation happens, when the healed person starts to rise, that has to put a ton of pressure on the family system they left behind.
Oh, it does. And healing is often met with massive resistance. When the survivor starts to thrive, the toxic people around them will often criticize or mock or gaslight them.
Why?
Because your growth reflects what they haven't faced in themselves. Your clarity exposes their confusion. And they will try to pull you back into the chaos because your peace threatens their whole illusion of control.
Which brings us to the most important part, the strategies. How do we do this? If liberation doesn't require their permission, how do we start the practical work of reclaiming our peace?
We have to move from diagnosis to action. And you have to realize that peace isn't something you chase, it's something you protect.
You protect it. I like that.
You have to be intentional about defending your inner world.
There's this amazing shell in wisdom about this. If someone tries to give you a gift, anger, blame, drama, and you don't accept it, who does the gift belong to?
It stays with the giver.
It stays with the giver. And the smartest response isn't a big confrontation, it's absolute calm and unstoppable clarity.
That inner clarity is the goal. And to get there, we need tools. The first one is what we call the spiritual umbilical cord.
Okay, what is that?
It's a visualization. You have to consciously connect yourself to some unconditional source of love. Call it God, nature, the universe, whatever works, to nourish yourself when human love fails you. You have to feed your own soul.
Okay, that's one. What's the second tool?
This one is critical for stopping the shame spiral. You have to stop personalizing victim. You have to recognize that their criticism is never actually about you. It's always their shadow, their projection of what they refuse to face in themselves. The second they criticize you, you pause and you say internally, "That's not mine."
That's not mine.
You cut the cord between their projection and your reaction. It stops the shame from sticking.
And the third tool is just practical boundaries and distance.
You do not owe constant access to anyone who consistently tries to dim your light. Distance is not disrespect. It is self-preservation.
This includes what you call strategic detachment.
Yes, managing how often you talk and how deep you go. You create safe pockets for yourself where you can thrive. You control the access.
Beyond the psychological tools, though, we have to talk about healing the trauma that's literally stored in the body, that flight or fight response.
That's right, because that implicit body memory, it runs 80-90% of our dope behavior automatically. If you group in chaos, your nervous system defaults to chaos.
So what can you do?
Simple things first. Regulate the vagus nerve. Deep, coherent breathing. Inhale for 6, exhale for 6, for 10 minutes a day. Or even humming. It mechanically vibrates the nerve and can shift your system back to rest and digest. You have to train your body to feel safe again.
But for those really deep programs, those automatic reactions, talk therapy sometimes isn't enough.
For severe trauma, it often isn't. You need methods that change the format of the memory itself. Things like EMDR or memory reconsolidation.
How does that work?
They activate the traumatic memory slightly, but at the same time, they engage your brain in something non-traumatic, like eye movements. It actually rewires the memory. The story's still there, but it no longer triggers that uncontrollable physical reaction. You can finally react from a place of adult clarity, not childhood fear.
So what this deep dive really shows is that your liberation, ultimately, it doesn't need the other person to participate or understand.
Not at all.
Your path is about reclaiming your own sovereignty and choosing your own peace, no matter how they react.
That choice is everything. So the core message for you to take away is this. You were not broken by your environment, you were prepared by it. Your sensitivity, your clarity, your empathy, those aren't weaknesses. They are gifts forged in chaos. You're the one saying, this cycle ends with me. Now, we've talked about how emotional abuse is such a huge factor in mental health issues. But there was this one powerful, hopeful insight that really stood out. Studies show that having just a single buffering adult in childhood, a grandparent, a teacher, a friend, can completely protect a child by building their emotional resilience. Just one person. So we want to leave you with this to reflect on. Who in your life, now or in the past, has been your buffer? And how can you become that essential buffer for someone else?
And before we wrap up, we'd really love to hear from you. What part of this conversation resonated the most? Did you recognize any of these patterns in your own life? Or do you have a question you'd like us to explore in future episodes?
Your stories genuinely matter to us. So go ahead and drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read everything.
And if this episode brought you clarity, healing, or even just a moment of understanding, please like this video, subscribe to the Heal Your Mind YouTube channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode.
Thank you for spending this time with us. Take care of your mind, protect your peace, and we'll see you in the next episode.